With everything going on in the world, a lot of people are thinking about getting out of the West. I really can't say that I blame them. You have lots of social degeneracy, bad management, a high cost of living, in the US at least, an absurd dysfunctional healthcare system. You have lots and lots of violent crime, flash mob crime. You have the country completely divided over identity politics. So I could easily see why people want to get out. So today we're going to talk to one of those people who wants to get out of their current country and see what else is available in the world. Now, going from one Western country to another Western country, the changes and the differences will, it will depend a lot on you and what you're looking for. But if you're going to an Eastern country, it's like going to a different planet. So this is one thing we can help you guys with. If you're thinking about moving overseas, you can reach us on the Facebook fan page. We have a consulting service for expats who want to get started in new countries, whether it's Eastern, Western, developing, or developed. I also want to remind everybody this video is brought to you by Safetywing. What's up, guys? I'm in Mysore, India. I'm chilling with this cow here. If this cow were to give me mad cow disease, I would want to have health insurance. And if you're going to live as an expat, you're going to want to have health insurance too. He's either biting me or licking me. He's licking me. Aw, hello.
It's so cute.
See, if I get sick from touching this cow, I want to have health insurance, right? So Safetywing is a good health insurance for people like me who travel around the world and live in interesting places. I'm covered. If I get sick in India, at least I got health insurance. Safetywing is designed for people who move around and who travel, so it's the perfect health insurance for people who live our kind of lifestyle. So that being said, you have a little bit of a premise about who we are and what we do over here at Reborn Abroad. For those of you who are just viewing us for the first time, and for those of you who follow the channel, you guys already know kind of our backstory and what we do. Today, we're going to talk to Aunt Renata. She is from Bay Ridge, New York. She has a channel called Retire with Renata, appropriately enough. And if you would like to learn about her journey from living in the United States to planning to live elsewhere, check out her channel. So let's get right down to it. What inspired you to want to move overseas?
Well, a lot of the things you had mentioned, after living in San Francisco on and off for 12 years and back, born and raised in New York, it's just going to be literally impossible financially to try to have any kind of quality of life when you retire. You'll be paying high medical costs, just dealing with rental costs or buying a home it's just way over the top. You've got to be in that ultra wealthy class to have any kind of cost of living. And I've seen so many people just give away all of their life savings to the medical industry as they age, not to mention, just the riffraff walking around the streets and all of the migrants that have come, the drug addicts on the streets of San Francisco, crazy people that run after you and throw things at you. Very scary places to live. I mean, beautiful cities, the government doesn't do anything about it. They say their hands are tied because they're homeless and they have rights. Well, some of these homeless have more rights than the tax-paying citizens. And the same thing that's going on here in New York now is we're giving the migrant beautiful hotel rooms to stay in and giving them money, letting them get driver's license. Like, why would anybody not want to come here and sneak over the border or, because once you're here, you've got more rights than the taxpayers. And but it's just there's just I just believe that there'd be a better quality of life. I'm looking at a few different places, trying to obtain my Italian dual citizenship. That's been a long journey, and I'll cover some of that on my my channel. But I have a extensive Italian background that goes back several centuries, and And I hope to, either end up in Italy or somewhere, maybe Southeast Asia. Thailand is wonderful. Just a lot of planning involved because, having a Social Security income, you have to, make sure that you're not taxed too much, or double taxed. There's the language, you have to learn the language. There's always expat communities, and I've done a lot of traveling overseas in Southeast Asia and, a little bit in Europe. I just can see that it would be a much better quality of life, even with the food and, the cost of living.
You know, I would agree. I think that even if you went to a Western country like Italy, for example, they also have problems with migrants. They're having problems with their society, but they still have a more functional healthcare system. They still have much lower real estate costs. It's still going to be a better deal than what people are in places like the United States or Canada or Australia are getting, because the southern part of Europe is much less expensive than the more industrialized north. And that's true in Italy. It's true whether you're talking about Spain versus Germany, or, like the south of France versus the north of France, right? There's this divide in Europe that, the southern part of Europe tends to be more laid back, Mediterranean lifestyle, lower cost of living, less opportunity. Whereas the
Mhm.
north of Europe tends to be more like the situation that people in countries like the US, Canada, places like that are facing. And Europe is also different politically and has done, some steps towards addressing some of the problems with migration. Some states, obviously, in the European Union itself, has not. They're resistant to it, but individual states have elected right-leaning leadership. So, things change. I think Europeans have a little bit more connection to history because they all live very close to one another. So there's this kind of, lived experience which is it's a bit of a played out word, but it's true. They've lived through wars, they've lived through conflicts. I feel like the population there is a little bit more difficult to trick than in places like the United States, Canada, which are more isolated and more separated. So, you might be living in a place like the United States and thinking, man, society's messed up. I'm paying all this money to live. And you may not even realize that you could potentially, relocate to a place that's very similar to where you are culturally, like a Western country, and still find houses for $50,000, even as low as $20,000, $30,000. I'm talking about things you can live in, not just, things that are shells per se. Like they might be dated from the 70s, but it's possible. I think a lot of people in the more isolated Western countries, they don't understand that as much because they don't have as much connection with other countries and other people's mindsets, and what's available to them in terms of lifestyle. So, yeah, I'm glad to hear that you're thinking about living overseas. Can you tell me a little bit about what your current living situation is like in the West? Now, bear in mind, guys, again, she's considering possibly moving to another Western country, but obviously a very different Western country, like Southern Mediterranean culture versus, a place like the United States, which is more similar to like an Australia, Canada. So, I want to hear what it's like being in America, in contemporary America.
Well, I do live in an apartment, and, I hope to, when I retire, buy some, something, a house or something overseas. Cost of living is high. I've been to several different countries where you could go out to eat for, three people or more, and it won't even cost you $25, and you'll leave extremely full, healthy foods. Farm to table is pretty much what you're going to be getting in a lot of these countries because, that doesn't go through all of the chemical processes that America allows to put into their food. I'm, very big on trying to eat healthy. And when I see, the ingredients and things, I just try to buy everything that is either organic or fresh off, the stand, farm stand. It's just very expensive. There's still, even in New York, they have their social problems, very crowded. Things are, crazy. It's just a little more, I guess, low key as far as the homeless goes in the neighborhood I live in, but it's just a place where it's a temporary spot for me until I decide where I'm going. I want to be able to enjoy my retirement and have a lower cost of living, healthy foods, a good healthcare system. Healthcare here is ridiculous, and the doctors want you to become their patient for life. So, they bill the insurance companies like so much money, it's ridiculous. And the insurance companies will only pay a certain amount. And you've got these large deductibles. And so as you get older, I think that's just going to be really, a difficult thing to try to manage. You want quality of life. You don't want to give your life savings to some doctor or hospital.
So I agree. I would say that, the advantage to some of the developed Western countries is that they do have healthcare systems. Like if you are looking at a European country, they do have functional healthcare systems in the majority of Europe. Obviously, there are countries in Europe where the standards are not going to be the same, especially if it's a non-EU country. But many of the EU countries, even the inexpensive ones, still have pretty high standard healthcare. They have a public and private system, and because they have a public system, it makes the private system cheaper. So you have a situation where there's competition with the private system, and in the States, it's more of a monopoly. So I see that the people who are very concerned about healthcare, if they have the capital, Europe is a good place to look. The problem with Europe is that if you don't have an ancestral line like what our family is doing, where you go through a great grandparent or a grandparent and you're able to obtain Italian citizenship by blood right, then you're going to need to look into getting residency, and you're going to need to look into possible long-term visas, either by investment, which many countries have golden visas. A lot of the countries also have little backdoor ways where they are looking for foreign investors and things like this. But you have to remember the majority of the EU countries have compacts and agreements with each other that they're meant to source within the European Union before they can source an employee from overseas. Maybe non-EU countries, it's still relatively easy to just open up a company and get residency this way. I really enjoyed living in Albania. It's a small country on the Adriatic and the Ionian Sea, just north of Greece and south of Montenegro, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it. I ran from insane Vietnam lockdown, COVID madness to this place and hung out there for 9 months. And I could easily see it as a place to retire. So I imagine that if you're interested in a country like Montenegro, Albania, Serbia, it's probably going to be a lot easier for you to obtain residency there versus trying to obtain residency within an EU state. If you do have the blood right as an option, several different countries offer it. I tried getting mine through the Irish side, but mine is great grandfather. And from what I understand, you can only go to grandfather. There's one law firm in Ireland claiming that they can do it, but a lot of stuff online indicates that it could be a scam. So, I was more hesitant, and we opted to go through the Italian family. So for those of you who have that as an option, we're going to have a service where we help connect you to reliable service providers who can help you find your genealogy, your family's documents in the communa, help you source information on what communas to go to for your case, for your situation, whether or not to deal with your country's Italian embassy. So and we're going to have more content on that as well. So please look for that. Potential retirement destinations. What do you have in mind? Where are you thinking about retiring? I know you've only been to so many countries, but you obviously have the internet just like everybody else. So, with all the information out there, what do you have in mind?
Well, I've been taking notes, and I'm also some of my travels. I, really loved Portugal. Portugal does not, from what I'm still doing my research, doesn't hack Social Security benefits. It's a little more difficult and expensive to try to get residency there because a lot of people are looking at it also. Portuguese are very welcoming. The food is, great. The cost of living, the cost of buying homes in certain areas like Lisbon and Porto are going up a little bit because a lot of people, the Americans and other people are looking at it like retirement destinations or, buying a second home there. So like anything, the more people that want it, the more the price will rise, because of what supply and demand kind of thing. And they know they can get it. I'm definitely thinking of Italy. I've been taking some notes about where, probably more like southern Italy, because that's really where my ancestry is. And it's a little bit, I think, less expensive, but there's many places, Calabria, Umbria, Sicily. I have a Sicilian grandmother. I hear that, Sicily is beautiful. I haven't been there yet. And, you can buy a home for under $100,000. And the Italians, one of the reasons I'm looking at Italy is that they're very friendly people. The language isn't really difficult. If you know Spanish or, just everyday living, I find when you're living in the area, you just happen to pick it up because people will talk to you that way and, you just start picking it up. I also enjoyed visiting in Albania. That was a European, it had like a European kind of ambiance to it, a lot of cafes, lots of Mediterranean food, a beautiful coastline. And it's, it was definitely on my radar for, possibility. I've been to Vietnam. That, there's some very beautiful places. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten to a lot of the beach areas, but more and more people are considering Vietnam and Thailand. I loved Thailand. I hope to go and look more at the other smaller little islands and beach towns. Chiang Mai was lovely. There's so many options, and there's so many baby boomers that are retiring now, and also like considering like how am I going to make it here on a limited income, and just with the medical system, I think that's the biggest thing. The doctors, they just bill like ridiculous amounts and the insurance company pays small amounts and then you're stuck with the rest of the bill. And so these are some of the places, I want to go where there's good medical, there's people that are friendly and nice and good food, healthy food. And, the cost of living is much less. These are all things that I'm keeping in mind so that I can continue to travel because I, love to travel. And those are some of the places.
Man, there is a lot to unpack there. Okay, so for Albania, they have a European feel because they are Europe, but yet they always feel like they're not Europe. Like my friends there would always tell me that, oh, that we're not a European country. And it's like, yeah, you're like on the Adriatic Sea, you're in Europe, and you're maybe not a European Union country, but it's very much still Europe, For healthcare and retirement, I think Thailand and Vietnam are both interesting options. Thailand is a better option than Vietnam because Vietnam doesn't have a retirement visa. We could get you to stay in Vietnam, but we would have to establish a company and make you an investor. And then if you have $200,000 to put into a Vietnamese bank, you can have this pretty much indefinite TRC. I mean, you can stay as long as you keep the capital in the bank and you keep renewing the investor visa. But there are also ways to do it without. But if you're thinking about stability as you retire, do you really want to be engaging in some sort of situation that's legal, but kind of not how they want you to do it? And then in a few years, it may not be legal, right? If they suddenly decide to enforce it and they care or they don't, right? So we want countries that have like legit retirement visas that are relatively well spelled out. So if you were going to look at Vietnam for retirement, if you have the capital to do it the right way, it's probably not a bad place. The healthcare is inexpensive, very low cost of living, one of the cheapest countries in the world, very culturally and geographically diverse. But Cambodia would probably be better because of the actual policy. They have a retirement visa, but Cambodia's healthcare system is nowhere near as good as Vietnam's or Thailand's. None of these countries are going to have any kind of social healthcare system for you as a foreigner. You're never going to get residency in these countries, but it's an inexpensive place. Healthcare is extremely inexpensive. Healthcare in Thailand is probably the best in the region behind Singapore. Singapore, is not a cheap country. Thailand is a very inexpensive country, and you can have a good quality of life at pretty much any price. If you're looking to retire in Thailand, and we have connections over there for real estate, long-term retirement visas, we have all kinds of people who can facilitate. So just reach out to us on the Facebook fan page. And if you're thinking about that, we can help you. And if you're thinking about coming to Vietnam and you have the capital or you don't have the capital, we can figure out a way for you to stay in the country. I pride myself on telling people the truth. I don't like to paint a rosy picture, because you're dealing with a developing country. And if something suddenly changes in a crazy way, you need to be able to adapt to that. Whereas if you're in a European country, I mean, for now, they're relatively stable and they have systems in place. Some of these countries in Southeast Asia, they can change very dramatically. What's nice about Thailand is a tourism-based brand. That is how they make their money. So they create these pathways for the foreigner to stay there legally, and it remains relatively stable. So if you are at a little bit of a lower budget, but you can still afford to have private health insurance and private healthcare, Thailand's a great option. If you're older and you want to hustle and you want to have a business, you want to open up your dream hotel or your dream hostel, then you want to look at Cambodia. If you need to do a little bit of side hustle where you teach a little bit of English and you just mostly are in a semi-retired kind of situation, or you have enough capital to start your own business, then Vietnam can be a great option also, because the healthcare is pretty good. If foreigners can 100% own businesses, and the Vietnamese government wants you to come and open a business, they don't want you just to open a company so you can get a TRC. They want you to actually open a business and invest money into Vietnam. So there are ways, regardless of what you want from your future, that you can set yourself up in the Southeast Asian countries. But I do see the appeal of the European countries with stable healthcare system, somewhat stable democratic systems, even if they're having trouble these days. Which countries are you considering and why?
Definitely Italy, because I feel, that's just kind of my background. And I love the Mediterranean food and climate. And so that's one. Sicily, Italy, same difference, just different areas. Portugal, I was very impressed with Albania. Thailand, very friendly people. I like their food. I mean, and from what I hear, better medical care than I'm still researching some things. There's also some countries in the Balkans, Croatia, possibly. I'm just looking at, I'm kind of still in the gathering information stage. To me, it's very important on how they tax your pension and Social Security. Still finding out a little bit more about that in Italy. But, when I do make a decision, I most likely will hire a CPA and discuss. Well, I think probably even before I make a decision, because it's important to know, if you're going to have, once you retire, you have limited income coming in and you're on a fixed budget. So it's important to know, you don't have surprises at tax time, because, most of these countries, all of them, I'm sure, will want you as a citizen to pay taxes. Not all. I hear Portugal doesn't tax your Social Security. So it all depends. If I'm a dual citizen, it will be a different tax situation for me in Italy than somebody who's just going over there to retire and live. Same thing with Portugal. So I think with any country, if you're a resident, and like I think you were saying that some countries won't even allow you to become a citizen. You would become a permanent resident. So those are some of the places I'm thinking about. Still a big world out there, and still doing some research.
No, Asia, you wouldn't even be a permanent resident. You would just be on retirement visas that you would renew yearly. So there's no like status for the foreigner. This is a big misconception that people have in the West. It's because we let everybody in that the rest of the world does that. And in Southeast Asia, that's not the case. There is pathways to citizenship, but it's generally if you do something like very big for the society, like in Cambodia, the prime minister has given citizenship to foreigners, but it was people who were like, they had done things for Cambodia that were big, right? They had either formed some sort of professional organizations or done some sort of charities or right, or they work like in environmental preservation for Cambodia, for example, or or they want a couple judo fighters to come over from the Ukraine and be on their national team. Like, so it's a little bit like these things happen, right? Because it's the nature of the kind of country it is. But like a real like status in the country is really going to just be in the European countries. But the thing, guys, is regardless of whether you have the capital to just keep doing retirement visas in Asia or to get residency in a European country or just to get residency in a small Balkans country, there is a pathway to do all these things. It's just a question of like, how do you take your first steps? And that's where we come in. We can help you guys get set up overseas. We can give you guidance. We can give you insight into 11 years as expats, helping people get their lives started, getting jobs overseas, dealing with these developing countries, giving you guys a little perspective from being outside of the bubble. For a lot of people that are in the States, it's very easy for them to think about the world in like an American mindset with their value system. And they don't realize that the rest of the world has completely different values. The Western countries are somewhat similar, but the Eastern countries, it's like landing on a different planet. So what you think is normal or acceptable is different in different parts of the world than what is reality, right? So let's talk about the financial planning. What do you have? What are you doing to be prepared to retire overseas?
Well, definitely, like I said, I am, doing my research and trying to figure out what kind of a budget I will have with, Social Security and my pension. Most importantly, getting ready to, get your finances in order, paying down your debt, just sizing up what you have. I have investments. So you have to, you have to just think realistically and put priorities in place. Like, to me, I want to be able to have good health care, good food. What are your priorities? I want to own a little something, be able to travel. So you create your budget, and most importantly, you get rid of your debt. So when you do leave here, you're able to just live on your income that's coming in. And financially, you need to look at their tax situation because it's important. You could be dual taxed if you're not careful. So these are things that require a lot of research and to put your priorities in, place.
So like a lot of countries have tax treaties, guys. So like even Vietnam and the US, for example, have tax treaties. So if you're paying taxes in Vietnam, there's not going to be a double taxation. Now, I don't know at a certain income or how much money you're moving, that might be different. But like for your average person, if you're paying taxes in Vietnam, you get a credit. And then that credit can be applied to your taxation in a Western country, right? So it's how we did it when we lived there. And I can tell you guys that Vietnam is a lot different in how their tax system works than it is in the West. And they're two very different types of places. So you can get a creative and interesting tax situation in Vietnam, but it's just a question of, do you feel comfortable bringing so much capital into a country that is a one-party dictatorship and that at any time could change the rules? They could just change the rules and make things messy because that's kind of like what they do all the time. So there's pros and cons to dealing with people like that. But if you're dealing in cash, Southeast Asia is really, really not a bad place to be. Cambodia, unfortunately, does not have a tax treaty with the US. So you could definitely be double taxed. But if you work in cash, again, Cambodia, not bad. Vietnam also with the crypto. Vietnam doesn't regulate crypto. So it's not part of their taxation system, at least yet. So, you have these interesting situations in Southeast Asia. So that's why I say that it's not a one size fits all, guys. You have to look at your situation. You have to look at your resources, your assets, what plans you have in place, what you want from your lifestyle, what's realistic. how old are you? Or do you need to work? Do you have capital from overseas and you don't need to work? Are you going to open a business? There's a lot. So if you guys need help with this is where we come in. What visas have you looked at for like the places that you want to go? Well, first let's talk Italian citizenship, because your situation is going to be different. You're doing blood right. So you're not coming in on a visa, you're coming in as a naturalized Italian citizen.
Yes. So that's, I guess, why my focus right now is on Italy, because once I do obtain this dual citizenship, I will be a citizen and be treated differently as far as taxes go. And so that's really where I've been putting a lot of energy. I've also looked into Portugal, and they do have various different visas that you can go for, and investment visas, golden visas. Um, it looks like it's a lot more expensive, but once you go through the motions, you can buy homes at very reduced costs if you're staying out of the bigger cities like Lisbon and Porto, and going a little bit off the beaten path, or down south to the Algarve. And so those are the two places I've been really putting a lot of my energy. I've also looked at Thailand and still may consider that, just because it's such a beautiful place and the food is amazing, the people are friendly, and just talking with you, I've learned a lot about the cost of living, and, how it would be easier to retire there. Now, for me, in a lot of ways, because I come from a European background, I feel more comfortable in a European background, but I haven't made any decisions yet. I'm still kind of gathering information.
I mean, if you prefer living in a European country, I get it, because long term I do too. I like Southeast Asia for business, but I don't know if I'd want to retire there maybe, but I do know why someone would want to retire there, because you can live in such a high standard of living for like no money. I mean, you're
Yes.
talking high rise apartments, rooftop pools, like, again, it varies country to country. Like Thailand has better healthcare than Cambodia, obviously, and dealing with these countries can be kind of a little crazy at times. But out of all of them, Thailand's the most organized. It's very inexpensive. They've got legal cannabis. They've got an extensive healthcare system. It's a pretty comfortable country to retire in. Some of the best luxury real estate in Bangkok for like really no money. Like Cambodia is a good value for condos too, because they did all the housing boom when China was pumping all that real estate money out there. But there's so many empty units, and like you can get condos out there for like, again, like 40, 50 grand, maybe like 100 or so if they're like something that's really nice in Phnom Penh. And again, 120 or so, you're talking like 3-bedroom apartment condos with good views. I mean, and I'm talking in dollars. In Thailand, obviously, it's still, very inexpensive, but of course there's things that are very, very expensive. It just depends on where you want to live. And that's the thing with Asia. There's like a lifestyle at every price bracket, and there's all this different like activity. So like you could live in a place where there's like nothing going on, like a beach town or an island, or you could live in a place like Bangkok or Chiang Mai, where they're international cities, people are coming and going. They have modern healthcare infrastructure. So I mean, Thailand is a pretty good option for somebody who's on a lower budget but still wants a really good lifestyle. And like I said, there's a lot of different ways to work with the Thais, because this is their bread and butter. Whereas countries like Vietnam and Cambodia are a little bit more wild, but then, you might be able to have your dream business or become wealthy in your old age. I mean, these are the type of places where things like that happen. And, teaching English is always a possibility for earning extra income, or anything to do with teaching in general, or products associated with expats, or products that foreigners would want. Like if, for example, good baking, like I have a friend who was able to become pretty successful by baking pies, and he made enough to buy a business, and he ended up not wanting to stay in Vietnam, but he came from just baking out of his apartment to owning a restaurant. So like these opportunities do exist, like, and it is what you put in. It's just that you're putting into a place where things can change and be a little unpredictable at times, right? Let's talk about your thoughts about leaving the US. Do you feel bad about that?
Not really. I mean, I will miss I will miss people, and and I can always visit like once a year, like when I lived in California, even though my friends and family were in New York, I'd go visit once or twice a year. So, I mean, I don't really have strong feelings about leaving. I mean, missing. With the way communication is these days, you can do Skype, Zoom, Messenger. It's like they're there. They're just not physically there. So I look forward because I'm really kind of an adventurer. I do look forward to exploring different cultures, different countries. It's just to me the world is your oyster, and in your later senior years, you should be out there enjoying and experiencing life. And I feel that a lot of the people in the United States thinks, well, now you're coming to your end, so you might as well just hunker down and get ready to pay all these bills. So no, the short answer to your question is I don't think I would be. I look forward, just because I've been to a lot of different countries, to an easier life, beautiful scenery, healthy fruits and vegetables that you don't have to pay extra because they came from a farm, and all that. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a really artificial way to live, the way that people in the US live. There's no wonder there's so many health problems. I'm really happy that guys like Robert Kennedy have brought a lot of that attention to the public about, what has gone on with the regulatory bodies and the capture of our systems that are meant to protect us and to keep our food clean and to not sell us drugs that are dangerous to us. Like, so, if you're concerned about things like that, unfortunately, like, globally, all these countries have different types of issues that are related to that. Like, for example, Vietnam, if you don't know, it does appear like the food in the market is organic, and it is sort of organic in a way. Like, it's the way they've done it for thousands of years. It's just that they also now dump pesticides all over the food that they produce, and there's no regulation. And even though in America the regulatory bodies have been captured and are corrupt, they barely do anything in these countries, right? So Thailand, for example, has a better regulatory bodies around food and higher consumer standards because of their long experience living with foreigners. The upper class, they demand clean food that's at a reasonable price. So you can actually go to Thai grocery stores and you can find organic food for really not a whole lot more expensive than non-organic products. Thailand is very organized that way. Like, if you want to eat clean there, it's not that expensive to do so, especially if you cook at home. Their food tends to be somewhat oily. There are restaurants that cook high quality food, but in general, the Thais do use a lot of oil. So, you can go to a Thai supermarket, you can buy largely organic vegetables, and you can prepare things using olive oil yourself. You can prepare their dishes using olive oil. So it's a country you can live and you can eat cleanly if you choose to. Vietnam and Cambodia is a little bit more complicated. Vietnam gets a lot of its food domestically because it has the Mekong Delta and the Central Highlands. And it also imports certain types of foods from China, which also has a very sketchy regulation. And I wouldn't trust like how products and how crops would be grown in China. There'd be, heavy pesticides, heavy chemicals. So these are things that you do have to think about, guys. Countries in Europe have European standards, so there is, a benefit to that. But countries that are non-EU, like Albania, for example, they're organic by tradition. But I'm not sure that, that'll stay that way, as they slowly become more connected into the European sphere. They're already in NATO. Once they get the society a little bit more organized, they'll probably be in the EU at some point, right? So, another country, guys, Montenegro has an easy way in. You can buy real estate. There's no limit on how cheap. So you can buy real estate for 40 grand and get residency. The thing is, you can't leave much. You can leave for part of the year. But if you open a company, you can actually leave for a longer part of the year. So there's a couple different ways that people are doing it in Montenegro. And it kind of depends whether you want to leave Montenegro a lot or you don't mind hanging out there. Albania started a bunch of different schemes around digital nomad, retirement. They have, you can still open a company and get residency, especially as a US citizen. It's not so difficult. What advice would you give to someone who's in your situation, but like maybe a year behind your planning?
Do your research, listen to your channel, go out and take short trips and see what you think. I mean, I don't think you should ever move somewhere if you haven't visited several times and stayed and kind of seen, picture yourself there, check the tax situation, just start doing your research and talking to people and listening to Reborn abroad, because you will learn a lot of information. And also me, as I start doing more on my channel, it's definitely going to cover, retirees and, just get out there and, just join Facebook groups and do your research. That I think that's the most important thing, and visit the country. The language is an important thing. Is it a tough language to learn? Most of the Latin languages are a little bit easier. Portuguese, I hear, is a little more challenging. But I think one of the most important things, and when I go to visit a country, is, just get into the culture. Don't go there expecting them to rise up to you. You're in their country. Learn their customs, and be a welcome visitor, not somebody that they can't wait till you leave because you're demanding an American. It's just always remember that you're visiting their country, and see if this is a culture like Thailand really liked, that they, had a lot of Buddhism and yoga and that type of thing. So you've got to see if you want to live closer to a city and have access to culture, opera, symphony, plays, you just have to write down a list of what you want and what you see yourself doing in the next 20, 30 years of your life.
It's funny because even little Saigon in Vietnam has a symphony, and I think a lot of people wouldn't really think that, right? They wouldn't know. They would hear a place like Phnom Penh or Saigon. And if they are at the age that most boomers are, who are the people coming into retirement now, they would make associations maybe with things they heard on the news about the Vietnam War when they were kids, or about the Khmer Rouge. But it's easy to forget that like another 40 years of history also went by, and that like these places are not exactly the way that the media portrayed them in the 1970s. And I actually think it's a good thing that people go overseas and try to, be respectful to the local culture. I think more people should do that when they come to the US also. Like, I don't think America's a country that's against migrants. It's just people want people to come in legally, come in through the front door, make an effort to assimilate, an effort to learn the language. I don't think that makes people racist, or to want to have a border. Most of the world has borders. All these countries you guys are thinking about retiring in have borders, they have laws, they have immigration policy, they have ways in which they manage the foreigner, right? This is how the entire world works. The countries that the migrants are coming from and are coming into our country, where they're being given all these rights above the citizens, they're getting housing when citizens are waiting on lists for 20, 30 years. It would not be the same way for you if you were retiring in, Guatemala, for example. You would pay what you need to pay and you would follow their laws, or they would throw you out, right? And this is just the way the whole entire world works. So I think it's good that, the older generation is going to have to look at retiring overseas. For not everybody, but for a lot of people, it's going to be a better option. And it's going to open up their minds more, hopefully. You can go overseas and you can be the same person that you've always been, or you could go overseas and you can see things a little differently and change the way you think about the world, about what's important. And hopefully that's what you get from this, guys. And that's what I try to do in my service. I try to help people who are regular folks, not the super wealthy. Nomad capitalist already has that niche. I would love it, but it's not realistic. I help people like me, people who were just doing regular blue collar work, and they realize that this is stupid. It's not getting me anywhere. I can go overseas and I can create so much new opportunity for myself. And of course, you do realize that it's good for retirees as well. So that's why we want to have these conversations. But for someone who's in their 40s, 30s, 20s, and you're facing the reality that the degree that they told you was going to result in the good job, it doesn't really do that. It's mostly a cult, and it teaches you to hate your country. And like, you don't have, people are going to start to go either back to becoming plumbers, firemen, but there's going to be a lot of people who are just like, forget it, I'm getting out of here. I could go live and start a business in India and introduce some product to this enormous market that they don't have, and they have this huge amount of wealth and development that's happening. So like, guys, it's all about your mindset, right? And more people are going to start to check out if things don't start getting better. If the West doesn't improve living standards, and I'm not going to be a pessimist, maybe things will get better, but if it doesn't, then you got to go to the place that's 30, 40 years behind if you want to have quality of life, because the richer countries, they can enforce their idea for society in a more stringent way. Even though countries like Vietnam or Cambodia may be more authoritarian in many respects, they're also somewhat libertarian. You pay your money, and for the most part, they leave you alone. Vietnam less so, Cambodia more so, right? So again, these are the questions you need to ask yourself. What is your values? What do you want from your life? What are you retiring with a lot of cash? Are you retiring with a lot of money through pensions and 401ks? There's just a lot of things to cover. And if you're having a hard time with that, hit us up. We don't give financial advice, but what we can do is we can tell you what some of our other clients have done and the ways they've set themselves up, and give you some examples of how other people we've helped retire to Cambodia, to Thailand, to other destinations, to Albania, how they were able to make it work for them. And we can help you with, if you're looking at Italian citizenship, a pathway towards that aim, because we're learning the process. So currently we're going through what's called a 1948 case. It's a little complicated to go into now, but it essentially means we're going through a great grandparent, someone who, had Italian citizenship at one point, right? So once we obtain our Italian citizenship, we're going to give you guys consulting services as well, based around how we did it. My wife's case is completely different, so she'll have perspective on that. We have huge lists of service providers, genealogists, people who can help you from A to B, from start to finish, whether you're eligible. So just get with us and we can connect you to that service. And obviously, as we get our citizenship, our knowledge will only grow. So we'll be able to give you guys that knowledge as well. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this content, take a second to smash the like button. Please subscribe. A lot of people watch the videos. They don't take a second to like them or subscribe. So just take a moment. It helps. Share the video if you have social media, if you think somebody would find this conversation interesting. If you're looking for authentic content on being an expat and not somebody who is going to sell you a dream, that is what we do. Would you like to leave us with some final thoughts, Aunt Renata?
So I do suggest listening to Reborn Abroad, joining Facebook groups, Googling, visiting countries, and starting to do an outline of what's important to you in retirement, whether it be, and you can live in a smaller little city and then travel to a bigger city. It all depends on it. Like, every situation is different. Do your research, watch Reborn Abroad, watch my channel, join Facebook groups, and visit the countries. And good luck. I know that you'll be happier with a better quality of life and financial security when you do make your decision. But it's an important decision, so do a lot of research.